It's hard to keep all these straight. This is the separate case about Stormy Daniels and the trouble that Donald Trump may be in there, to go along with the charges, the civil case of alleged rape with E. Jean Carroll.
And what do we get against this backdrop? Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by 7 points. And you go, what's wrong with people? It's not what's wrong with Donald Trump. It's what's wrong with us. What's wrong with this country? Here's a guy, he's being charged for rape. And we're going to see 3 and 4 indictments. We see 2 impeachments. We led an insurrection. And yet Republicans follow like lemmings off of a cliff. And you have to start to say, and I don't want to attach this back to the gun segment, is what's wrong with people? What is wrong that this man, they still follow this charlatan, they still follow this animal. And you start to go, you throw up your hands and go, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, and the people who are, let me just say again, the evangelical conservatives who are supporting the white evangelical conservatives who are supporting Donald Trump are the same people that ran around shouting Bible verses during Bill Clinton's presidency, talking about how the country was going to hell because Bill Clinton was of such poor moral character. And now they continue to stand behind a man, let me say it again, who said in his deposition this year in this case that maybe it was a good thing that stars were able to rape women. And they're voting for him. Like, again, one thing we have found is the bill always, it comes due. You always have to pay the bill. Dominion taught us that. The Sandy Hook, who's that
Alex
guy?
Jones.
Alex Jones. Alex Jones learned that. You look at these people that beat the hell out of cops. They learned that on January the 6th. The bill always comes due. The bill will come due for a church that embraces Christian nationalism and embraces a guy who says it may be a good thing that stars can rape women in 2023.
No, I think that the problem we have, and it goes to your point of the evangelicals, to answer in part what Donnie's saying, is that we have no real moral pole that's standing up. So everybody's going asunder. If Moses and Pharaoh has the same moral standards, then who's going to deliver the children of Israel? And I think that is what's happened. The people that ought to be putting the Donald Trumps in check are checking off a box to vote for Donald Trump, no matter how outrageous he gets. And there's no level that he has taken us down to that they've repudiated. So where's your moral standards? And, one of the things that fascinated me about Joe's special last night is every movement that moved this country forward were led by moral people that stood outside of what was acceptable and moved society their way.
And Rev, by the way, evangelicals, Quakers, a lot of people that were on Abraham Lincoln's side and actually pushing Abraham Lincoln to action were evangelicals. They weren't talking about emancipation 20 years from now. They wanted abolition now. It was the Christian church in the North, in New England, that was pushing Lincoln and was actually ahead of Lincoln. You look at segregation, a lot of Jewish people, as you've talked about.
Abraham Hess.
During the 60s, and there were evangelicals out there, there were Catholics, there were Christians pushing the civil rights movement as well. And
anti-war movement, the Catholic priest. Right. It was always that those that made Lincoln understand to do what is right. Kennedy, Johnson, do what is right. Where are those that are coming to Trump from the evangelical community saying, do what is right? That's what's missing. So you wonder, why are people going for this? Who's telling them not to go for this? That are their moral barometers, moral leaders.
Eddie, you actually have pastors who know better, who have told me they know better, but they're afraid to speak truth from the pulpit because they think they may lose their congregation.
So that point actually reverses in some interesting way what Rev just said, right? So we can concede we have feckless leaders, we have spineless ministers, in pulpits in some places, who aren't in some ways engaging in that kind of moral leadership that we need. But they're also feeling pinched and pressured by everyday ordinary folk who seem to hold these views. So that on the one hand, we're saying that people aren't being moved by moral leadership. And then on the other hand, we're saying moral leadership is absent because they're afraid of people. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, and I think Donnie's point really gets us to this, is what does Donald Trump stand for all of these folk? Why is this man who's so clearly flawed, and that's a generous description.
He's pushing back against arrogance and elitism from the coasts. He's the one that's fighting for them. They feel like we have been run over and ignored and mocked and ridiculed and forgotten for 50 years. Here's a guy that they can't beat. So he's going to go there and he's going to raise hell. He's going to do what we need. He's going, you know, it's like the first time in 50 years it's wrestling that their wrestler goes into the ring and slays the bad guy, slays the arrogant people in the media, the arrogant people on campuses, the arrogant people that have looked down their noses at him and mocked him and ridiculed him for 50 years. That's what he represents to them.
So is that 40% of the country? Is that,
yeah, oh my God, that's at least 40% of the country. Yeah, at least 43, 44% of the country.
Is there, bringing it also back to guns, you go, what's it going to take with guns? Is there anything? Is that so deeply entrenched in people's souls and cores?
No, it's not.
Is there anything that can happen that they'll let go of him? That they'll let go of Trump.
Of Trump?
Yeah. Is there anything? You go, what is the threshold?
I mean,
because you just.
I will say this. But first of all, I just want to say there's one evangelical, if you really want to read about this, Andy Stanley, who's Charles' son. But incredible pastor in Atlanta. From everything I hear, he's written a book. We had him on the show. That's talking about, hey, we got to get out of politics. The pews are emptying out. We got to get to politics and get back to Jesus. That's his message. And let me just say, this foray into politics has been devastating for evangelicals. You look at whatever wins they've had. In the political arena, they've had those same losses in attendance. The pews are emptying out. Kids, younger kids who are contemptuous of Donald Trump, they're not going to a church that celebrates what he does. They're just not. And by the way, it would be the same thing if the church celebrated Joe Biden. You don't go to church for politics. You don't. You go there for Jesus. And they're not getting that. They're getting, like Andy Stanley says, you know, all these Andy Stanley was like, man, during COVID, I had people that were equating the vaccine to Satan. And it's just like, man, they're looking at Chinese religious cult websites, and they're getting their news from that instead of the red letters of the New Testament. Because I've talked to some of these people, and Rev, they haven't read the Gospels in a really long time.
Well, that is why what you say is so important, because the moral leaders that are in position are trying to be politicians themselves. They wouldn't be worried about the reaction of those in the pews if they were saying, I'm here for what is right, not here for what is popular. Don't forget, Martin Luther King was denounced by his own denomination, and they formed another form of the Baptist Church. The abolitionists were not part of the accepted church. You have to have moral leaders that stand up even against the religious institutions that are playing politics over what is right.
You know, I think this is really fascinating. Really quickly, I just think all of that seems right to me, but there's something else more fundamental, it seems to me, at stake, because it's not just simply arrogance, Joe. I think we're still dealing with the unresolved questions of the Civil War. Now, let me explain what I mean. The Civil War, of course, was between the South and the North. It had something to do with the place, the position. What will be the place of these slaves, these enslaved people in American society, right? What will we do with these black folk, right? But that question actually presupposes a prior question. who do we take ourselves to be as a nation? Are we a white nation in the vein of old Europe? Are we a nation of principle and ideas? And that question has always been at the heart of it, and it's not resolved. And so part of what we're dealing with is that the arrogance is the grievance, the fear, the anxiety. What Trump is bringing in tow is all of the underbelly of American society, which means that it's a deeply existential threat that we face, as we faced from the beginning.
I obviously, I think that's the bigger part of Trumpism. I can just say in the church, I can only speak from my own experiences, that in First Baptist Church, Meridian, Mississippi, and First Baptist Church, Chamblee, Georgia, and First Baptist Church, Pensacola, Florida, my church in Tuscaloosa, Calvary Baptist Church in Tuscaloosa, race had nothing to do with any of it. Just didn't. Never heard one racist thing in any of those churches. And I say that to people, and they don't believe me.
Convince me, Jim.
But it's the case. What's that?
I'm one of those people that are doubting that. Help, I'm being honest with you. Race didn't have anything to do with it.
Race? No, no. I can tell you, I was in church 4 days a week. Like, Sunday night training union, Wednesday night, Thursday night Bible study. I can just tell you, at least this was middle class, New South America. If somebody said a racist comment in any of those places, you'd be turned on. I mean, and again, there is just my life, the arc of my life. I remember a kid said something racist when I was in Meridian, Mississippi at Northeast Elementary School. A kid said something racist in a line, called a little girl a name, and I remember a young teacher's aide grabbed him by the ear, said, "What did you say?" and then dragged him along the line. We were going into the cafeteria, dragged him along the line by his ear, and he was screaming the whole way. Took him to the principal's office. We didn't see him for 3 days. This was in Mississippi in 1969.
Yeah.
In rural Mississippi in 1969. What message do you think that sent to the 45 kids that were in line? It wasn't socially acceptable. Again, now I know people doubt. I can only tell you my life.
Right.
I can only tell you my life. I'm not saying that people across the South and across America weren't saying racist things all the time. I'm just telling you, in the Baptist churches I went to across the Deep South, race wasn't a part of it. It was never part of the conversation. But I'll tell you what was: arrogance. Arrogance. Those people in New York looking down their noses at us. Those people in Washington thinking they're smarter than us. Those people in Hollywood mocking our values. Why do you think Passion of the Christ is one of the biggest movies ever? Because you know what everybody said? They finally made a movie about us.
Yeah.